Tri-City Sports Now, and I'm Marky Billson, and we're here with the motorsports racing expert, the Right Reverend of Rev. Well, traditionally it was called the Right Reverend of Speed, but, I just sort of did that. Jerry Bonkowski, NBCSports.com, talking about the All-Star Race in Charlotte. And we got 17 drivers that have been selected so far. And before I get to this, I know last year when we had you on, you were talking, or you dropped something of a bombshell of could the All-Star Race ever be held in Bristol? Now, there's some talk about maybe moving it from Charlotte in future seasons and such. And with the potential sale of NASCAR, I think anything's on the table. What do you think the odds are that in a few years this race might be at the world's fastest half mile?
Well, I think a lot of it, Marky, can be predicated upon, like you said, what happens with the sale of NASCAR and exactly where the sport essentially goes forward after a sale is completed. If a sale is completed, there's no guarantee that NASCAR is going to be sold. There's, I know that the France family has hired, Golden Stacks, I believe it is, to explore the possibility of a sale. But, we've been kind of down this road a few times over the last 15 years. And, this one seems to have a little bit more track to it, no pun intended. But I think that, if we do have a sale, I think then everything is on the table. Moving the All-Star Race around from track to track, which I think would be a good idea. And I originally, for the longest time, I've always wanted to race at Charlotte. They did a great job there at Charlotte Motor Speedway. But, the more as time has gone on, the more I thought about it, it's fair, I think, to a lot of the other tracks, like a Bristol or, Chicago in my backyard, to have a race like that. The question, though, Marky, and I think this would be the biggest, I don't want to say challenge, but it would be one of the biggest considerations that NASCAR would have to make is, when you race at Charlotte, you're going to have a pretty good-sized house. If you go to a place, let's say like Bristol, you'll have a pretty good-sized house.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of tracks don't necessarily convince that it would happen, though. Like a Chicago, for example. If it's an all-star race that doesn't have any points, unless there's fantastic fan engagement, they may only fill maybe a half place. So it's kind of a tangled web if they were to move the all-star race.
Well, I like you were mentioning about attendance, and certainly Charlotte, Bristol with the third largest capacity. What about a place like, and you have to move the date because it's all about, drinking milk right now with the Indianapolis 500, but potentially 257,000 seats, and they love racing in Indianapolis, someplace like that, which would really be a tremendous showcase for the best drivers in NASCAR. Do you think that an all-star race, even if it didn't have the points, could work in that venue?
Kind of the same thing what I just said about Chicagoland.
Okay. Yeah, similar area, you're sure.
Right. The thing is that, let's be honest, let's face it. The Brickyard 400 has not drawn the kind of crowds that I think NASCAR wanted to see in recent years. And, that's a point-paying race. That's where all the stars are at, all 40-some drivers, or 40 drivers, I guess. Whereas, the All-Star race is kind of down to limited to about 22, 23 drivers in total. I don't know if Indianapolis might be too big to have an all-star race. I'd love to see it there, but,
Yeah, I know my local bias would say Bristol. I know Darlington because of my traditional bias. I would love to see that. And I'm a proponent of Darlington getting another race back, and all this. Then again, though, I mean, Charlotte is so big with NASCAR racing. I mean, there is something special about going to Charlotte. Let's face it. And the other thing, though, that I want to talk about this race is that they're going to make this a plate race, a restrictor plate race, from what I understand. Jerry Bonkowski of NBCSports.com. Are you yay or nay on that?
I am a firm undecided.
Ah! I mean, I got to tell you, I am all for keeping races as safe as possible. Let's go with the Hans device. I mean, please, I don't think there's any question about that anymore. I'm a big I want all the football helmets out there to be preventing not just skull fracture, but concussions. And I think the NFL is actually making some moves for that. But yeah, helmets before 2020, 2002 were actually basically for skull fracture and not concussion. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. So I'm like, let's go with the modern helmets. Come on, this sort of thing. I'm big on that, but I still am not quite sure. I mean, my old argument is with restrictor plates, look, if it keeps it bunched together, that would seem to me to be more wrecks. And is that what you really want? I know the flip side, well, you don't want to be running into the wall at 210, but, which is safer? And that's where I'm sort of like saying, you know what, I really am not that big of a fan of restrictor plates. Why suppress the car? I mean, we want athletes to run the fastest, to be the strongest. I think you'd want the maximum performance with the car as well. That's my argument there. But anyway, what are your thoughts? What is safer in your opinion? And I know I've asked you that question again, but let's just have it again. Restrictor plates or non-restrictor plates?
Well, that's really a difficult question to answer because there's so many things that, go into quantifying it. I mean, a place like Talladega or Daytona, it's pretty clear you need a restrictor plate. But, I mean, we really haven't, I think we've had maybe one or two other tracks where we try to play that over the years. But, we're going to obviously have it this weekend in the All-Star Race. But, the safety elements of NASCAR have, become so great that I don't know if you really need a plate for safety reasons only. And let me try to explain it a little bit more. I get the safety aspect, but Charlotte's like Vegas, like Kentucky, like Chicago, like Texas. They're all pretty much the same. They're mile-and-a-half tracks, and we've seen some terrible wrecks at all of them, and drivers walk away. And that's not to say that every wreck that the driver's going to walk away, but the odds are pretty darn good that a driver's pretty safe. The question though becomes is, yes, if you have a plate on the car at a place like Charlotte, you're going to, make the race a little bit more safer, even though it's already pretty safe as it is. But you're also going to bunch the field up, which is going to be tighter racing, which is what fans come out to see.
Mm-hmm.
The question though becomes then, okay, well if it works in the All-Star Race, then we start thinking about maybe running plates at a Fontana, at a Texas, at a Chicago, at a Kansas, a mile and a half or 2 miles, or even a Michigan for that matter. Do you do that to bunch the fields up? Because there even though we have been seeing closer racing over the last few years, I think there's still a segment of the fandom out there that want to see even tighter and closer races because let's face it, there's a lot of races we see where more than half the field is a lap or more down by the time the checkered flag falls. So I get what NASCAR is trying to do when it comes to the plates, not only for the safety aspect, but also to tighten up the tracks. But like you said, would this lead to more wrecks? Would it not lead to more wrecks? I guess it's just a matter of we'll see what happens, and then we kind of evaluate the data and we go from there. But I would not be surprised though, Marky, to see NASCAR hit the So, I mean, there is a possibility that if this succeeds, we may not see the end of it. We may see this may just be the beginning, and then next year we may see plates at other tracks, maybe like a let's say, for example, maybe a Darlington and that. But the question is, do you really want to use the essentially the artificial way? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but the artificial way of slowing the cars down, tightening the pack, as opposed to the way they are now. I mean, I think the jury's out on that.
Could you I mean, I'm looking, and I know you said I don't know about safety, but let me just put it this way. With pony cars coming in, well, it's not as much metal around a driver. I mean, that's why, Grandpa wants to buy the big car, so to speak.
Right.
It's safer, And I'm thinking, I mean, we might see with restrictor plates what the argument could be then going forward with the pony cars coming. I mean, 2 manufacturers using them in the future here, the smaller cars in NASCAR racing. This may be the way it works out, I would think, and all this. I want to ask you this. You got 17 drivers in the All-Star Race. Now, for people not familiar, how are the drivers selected for the All-Star Race? I know they've got to have won before, that sort of thing, but can you elaborate a little bit about these 17 drivers, how they've been selected?
Race winners, past champions, fan vote. It's a compendium, if you will, of drivers who've had success in races, either the previous year or this year, as well as past champions as well too. So, for example, if they had not retired, you would have seen Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart
Sure.
in this race because they were past champions. That's kind of the example I'm giving. But I believe the final field is going to be, I want to say 22, which is typically what it is, 22, 23 drivers. So I don't know. Well, of course, we have the what they call it, the shootout. So you're going to have a chance for at least 1 or 2 drivers to race their way in. Then you get the fan votes. That brings up to 20 right there. We may still have another 1 or 2 other drivers in there, but the point is you're kind of seeing the creme de la creme, if you will, of NASCAR because these are guys who've had success. You're going to see your typical stars like the same champion Martin Truex Jr. You're going to see Kevin Harvick. You're going to see Kyle Busch. You're going to see Kurt Busch. You will not probably see some of the drivers who have not had success in recent years who have not been as fortuitous, I guess we would say, as the other drivers. So this is kind of like a this is the NASCAR version of the All-Star Race that you would see, or an All-Star event, really, I should say, that you'd see like in the NBA or Major League Baseball or the NHL, the best of the best. And the format to me has worked, although changing the format around so many times as they've done in the 32-year history or whatever it's been of the All-Star Race. That's been kind of I think a sore spot for some fans, but I kind of like the transition or the change, if you will, if there are changes from year to year, because let's face it, NASCAR is in the entertainment business, and they want to do the best they can to give as good of a show, not only track fans to come to the racetrack, but obviously also watch on TV as well.
Okay, I mean, it's a maximum of 21 drivers, by the way, I say. And I would imagine if with fan voting that Chase Elliott then has a chance to win the fan vote and get involved in possibly, this could be his breakthrough in NASCAR racing right now. Jerry Bonkowski, though, let me ask you about that. The field of 21. I know there's been some criticism, races, they're not fielding 40 cars or they're not fielding 42. I guess I go back to the safety. And I remember when Bristol went from, I think, 37 to 43 cars. And I was like thinking, that's ridiculous. On a half-mile track, that's absurd. Why, why don't you just, take the seat belts off if you're going to do that and all this? Could you see where, less cars are better? I've heard both ways, but what are your thoughts on that?
I was very against going from 43 down to 40. I thought that, we had established a number that had been the standard for how many years had it been? Probably close to 20 years, I'm going to guess. Mm-hmm. And, but now as we have reduced the number of teams, or number of cars rather, we've seen an uptick, I think, in the performance overall of races, the closeness of races, the tightness of races. But at the same time, let's face it, when NASCAR reduced the size of the field out of business.
Yeah.
They just couldn't afford it. So, I mean, I think we kind of hit it at a good number with 40. I can see easily going down to maybe 38, even 37. But then again, there's 35 charters, what I think it is, or 36. So, you want to make sure that your charter, or the team owners that have charters are taken care of, and their drivers are in the race. And maybe you'll have essentially one or two or three wild cards who not have charters. So I mean, I like it, but I'll tell you this. I mean, I'm not changing the subject, but I think this kind of goes in with what we're talking about here. Is that I think we're going to continue to see 40 again. Maybe we might drop down to 37, 38, but I think more importantly, especially if there is a sale of NASCAR, I think you're going to see potentially a drop in number of races in NASCAR. I don't think you're going to see 36 season races. I think you're going to see maybe as few as 30. I think if a company or an individual buys NASCAR outright, I think you're going to see some tracks that maybe they don't have the draw, if you will, attendance-wise, may lose one race if they have two, and some tracks that may only have one may not have any anymore. So I think that's something to keep an eye on, especially as this potential sale of NASCAR goes through. And like I said, it may not happen, but you got to look at all different options.
Yeah, you almost hate to see that, but at the same time, look, we talk about economic impact, but economic impact, people come out with studies and you're like, wait a minute, what's the criteria here? Did this really have $1 million economic impact?
Right.
I mean, you never really know. What I go by, I talk to the cab drivers. That's the Bill Veck in me, okay? I go and I got to tell you, the cab drivers around here tell me we haven't made the killing since off the Bristol Motor Speedway since the Battle of Bristol, since the football game between Tennessee and Virginia Tech that drew 157,000. Evidently, they just for whatever reason they're certainly not getting a spring race, and they're not getting it with the night race at Bristol. So you say, oh, you hate to lose an economic impact at a track somewhere, but I'm saying, well, what kind of an economic impact it is? A hotel next to the radio station isn't selling out in spring. It used to be you couldn't get a room past Asheville for any of the Bristol tracks. So, let's look at that right here. The format here, 80 races, you have these stages. Obviously, we now know where stage racing came from, but the reslotting of the field and all that, I've never quite gotten that or what the appeal is. What's the deal with, hey, you won this stage, now go to the back?
Right. Let me pick up one last point you made from the previous thing you said. The downturn in attendance, especially at a place like Bristol, is not Bristol Motor Speedway's fault. It's not NASCAR's fault. It is, like you said, I mean, there used to be hotels that sell out all the way to Asheville, Knoxville, whatever. The reason they don't sell out anymore, it was because, let's face it, the hotels were greedy. I mean, $300 a night for, I'm not going to get into a brand, but let's just say a low-budget hotel or motel. I mean, that's insane. And, fans put up with that for a long time because they wanted to see their favorite drivers. But once you start seeing favorite drivers retire, it's just not important for the fans to pay $300 a night. So actually, the infrastructure, I guess if you will, of the communities around, the places like Bristol, really did a disservice to the fans, and they did a disservice to the sport and to NASCAR by charging such a high amount of money. So, but now getting back to your point about the stage racing, it kind of, I get the reason why they do it, because they don't want to give one guy the opportunity to dominate. They want to make him earn it. And, if you win the first stage, and you let a guy start the second stage in the front, then he's going to have another chance to dominate that stage. And then, of course, the final stage is the same way. So I like that they do that, because it kind of shakes things up, and, it allows more drivers who maybe don't win a stage, very often or even at all, to get a chance to win a stage. And then, that obviously gets them some points towards the postseason if they do make the playoffs, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I remember the success that Michael Waltrip had For instance, when, and it took him forever. I mean, it wasn't until 2001 in Daytona 500 that he won a race. And, it was always nice guy Michael and all but he would have some success at Charlotte. So I'm recalling that as well. Who do you think comes away as the All-Star winner this year?
I got to go with the guy that's hot. You got to go with Kevin Harvick. I mean, ideally, I'd like to see a Kyle Busch win, but I just think Kevin Harvick is just too dominant. And a couple of things. One, it's in everybody's backyard. Charlotte Motor Speedway, but it's a shorter race. It's more of a strategy race, which I really like the strategy that goes into this for the teams. And right now, Harvick, his crew chief, his team. I mean, they're on top of the world right now, and even though it's a non-points race, they're going to go for it as much as they can because they want the big payoff, with the winner's check, afterwards and that. And there's bragging rights, and certainly it's a good way to kind of get a tune-up, if you will, for going to, you're going to have a plate restrictor plate. It's a tune-up, if you will, for next week's Coca-Cola 600, which is the longest and most grueling race on the schedule. So I got to go with Harvick. I think he's going to be the guy that's going to do it. I'm going to
look. Well, even Harvick hasn't won it since 2007, but yeah, he's the hot hand. The couple of victories. Could he win 3 in a row twice this year, right even before the halfway point in the season? That would be something really special right there. But yeah, I'm looking forward, by the way, next week to talking to you about the Indianapolis 500 as well as the Coca-Cola 600, as IndyCar, I know, has added a new goggles concussion test that I want to talk to you about, as well as the swan song of Danica and all that. So I look forward to that in next week with you, Jerry. But until then, yeah, the strategy-based race, this is something, I said, it is in the afternoon, the Preakness, and then at night, it's the All-Star Race out of Charlotte. He's Jerry Bonkowski. You can read all about him, NBCSports.com. Well, all about what he writes. Follow him on Twitter, too. I'm Marky Billson. I'll be back to tell you about the college basketball potential rules changes that the ACC wants to do after this.
One of America's favorite
Okay.
And this week on The Revolution with Jimmy
There we go.